Hello, everybody watching us live or on YouTube recorded. We are back in France in Grenoble today with Suhasa. We're going to talk about her experience in one of the tech capitals of France. It's not happening at Station F, it's happening in Grenoble. So Suhasa, thank you for joining us today. If you could just introduce us to you a little bit, why you chose Grenoble, France, which seems a very interesting choice for someone, maybe a little bit about your program, and then we'll deep dive into what you liked about your program and where you are now.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm quite honored and humbled to be here. So as Patty said, I'm Suhasa, and originally I'm from India, and I did my bachelor's in engineering in India in Manipal, and then I eventually went to Grenoble for my MBA. And along the way, I grew up in California.
Wow.
Yeah, right in the Silicon Valley, right? So when Apple was becoming Apple, and I think I was 13 when I met Steve Jobs, and I was very fascinated with the product space. And so part of what led me to Grenoble was this fascination. So also as I after that, I moved back to India. I completed my education. And during my engineering, I also came across artificial intelligence. I actually built a circuit. And back then, I was not at all into software or product, right? I think the product manager role never existed. So I did electronics and communication. And then from there, I joined an ed tech company because I wasn't sure what to do, but I knew I wanted to do an MBA. That was one focus I had. And from there, I also then learned the IT landscape in a tech consulting company. I moved on to become a founder in an artificial intelligence company. We built machine learning models to forecast sales to reduce food waste. And so I did some research, and that's what led me to Grenoble, because I'm not sure how many people are aware, but France was the first country in the world to pass a food waste law in 2016.
Yep.
And so it was directly related. And when I did some research, I also found out about the semiconductor industry and the tech scene in Grenoble, right? So it almost seemed like a no-brainer in the end.
Had you been to France before you decided to pick up sticks and go to doing your MBA there?
No, honestly, as a kid who lived in the US, right, I grew up in New York and in California. And I always wanted to go back, and not maybe to Harvard, but I wanted to go back to Stern and do my MBA there. And I have to admit, Grenoble wasn't on my radar initially, right? So it's kind of funny how that works out.
My goodness, so you didn't speak a word of French before you got there?
No, and I actually landed. So I took a repatriation flight, right? Because COVID lockdown had just come into place. And I landed in Lyon. They lost my luggage and they were announcing it in French. And understood nothing except bagage and my name. But yes, so I did not know a word of French when I got there.
What about now? Did you learn it along the way?
I think 2 years in Grenoble was actually good enough, right? It's wonderful how much you can learn there when you embrace the culture and open
Yep.
yourself. So I speak more fluent French than I do German, and I've been in Berlin for 3 years now. So
Oh, that's fantastic.
yeah.
And in cultural terms for, and then we'll get into which MBA you chose because Grenoble has three different options. Culturally, how did you find adapting to the French culture?
Well, I think it was. I'll be very honest. It was a little hard
Yeah.
initially. And I think just the frustration of not being able to express myself in a full sentence, right, was difficult. But I think it was relatively easy because of the school, right, and the environment that we had. And also the place. It's a student town,
Yeah.
and people are very, very friendly. And believe it or not, I think most people say this is a very unpopular opinion, but you get very, very far in France if you speak a little bit of French, right?
100%. What people don't understand is French is a tricky language. After 80 or after 79, you have to start doing math. So it's 4 times 20 is 80. I mean, and I was never good at math. So you can imagine how long it took me to learn the numbers in French. Did you get the chance to ski?
Yes, I also had a few accidents the first couple of times I skied, so I stayed away from that after a while, and I took up surfing instead later on. So
Much better. You can imagine the team at the school saying, Patty, why'd you ask that skiing question? Now on to which program you chose. So Grenoble is pretty cool because you got your global MBA, the executive MBA, and then you've got the tech MBA. That's one of the few tech MBAs in Europe right now. So which MBA did you choose?
well, so when I got into the MBA program in 2020, there was no tech MBA yet. So I was in the global MBA program. But now, if I had the choice again, I might be really hard to decide for me, right, between both of them, honestly, because I think the tech MBA is also new, but it's also very fascinating
Yeah,
what they've been able to do with the course material there.
yeah, it's a little bit longer. So your program was fully 10 months, though, full-time in person.
No, actually, it was a little bit different. It was about, yeah, 2 years, right? So the first year was in person, and the second entire year was a thesis. So we had to write an MBA master's thesis for the second year. And
Okay, now let's explain to the audience that when you were there, we had a little something called COVID that happened to the world, and I'm not sure if people remember what that was. So talk to us a little bit about your experience. So we got why you chose it. Now talk to us a little bit about your experience while you were there on the courses, COVID. What was it like? So were you in person, online? Where were you physically? Walk us through that.
yeah, so actually, when I first arrived in Grenoble, I think end of September, there was no lockdown for the first 1 month, and gradually the country started going into lockdown with curfews. So for the first 1 month, we weren't allowed to have in-person classes, but we did manage to meet the teachers with social distancing and masks and everything, and also our classmates, right? And even after the curfew, I think it was just a few months where we were online. But since we were all physically in Grenoble, right, we would, of course, following the measures, we would still be able to meet for group work and
Yeah.
collaborate. So I think this is the fascinating part, right? So I had a lot of other friends in different colleges across the world applying for MBA. And during the COVID time, all of them differed.
Yeah.
But I was also fascinated with how quickly the college was able to adapt, right? And I think that's a business case in itself, right? Because not only did we arrive in France from countries with visa issues and borders closing down and everything else, but we also did classes in person within 4 or 5 months, right? And the college had everything set up in terms of the equipment, the high flex, the teachers were prepared, and I think that's also really amazing to see. So
No, they're very agile. Now, the global MBA's changed a little bit at Grenoble since you went there. So I'm not sure if you were there because they have specialized tracks. So
mhm.
finance, luxury, entrepreneurship, business analytics. Did they have that when you were there, or what did it look like?
Uh,
And if so, what was your specialization?
yes, they had this and they had a few more actually. So I was in
Huh.
international business development back then. And yes, so I did the specialization as well.
And they also have a study trip. So MBA programs, some have study trips, some have don't, some call them hiring tours, some don't. What trip did you go on while you were on the program?
Well, we were supposed to come to Berlin, but there was COVID, so we could not because of Germany had a very strict lockdown and not because of us, right? So we missed out on that. But the fun part is now that I'm in Berlin, I get to see the MBA that comes here every year and interact with them. So that's really nice.
We'll get to your why you're in Berlin right now in a minute, but that's fascinating. So what were some of when you were on the course? We talk a lot about you spoke earlier about MBA programs in the United States. Um, we find that programs in Europe are much more diverse. For
Mhm.
example, the MBA program here at Oxford Said is 97% international. And
Mhm.
that adds to the discussion. Diverse voices in the room count and add to the experience. Talk to me a little bit about the cohort you were in, the diversity, a little bit how you lived that.
Mhm. I think one of the really good things was that, again, we had people from everywhere, right? And since I've been in the US culture before, it was definitely much more diverse background. And what was really interesting was really getting together with people from different backgrounds, also in terms of cultures, but also in terms of what they do, right,
Yeah.
professionally. and really speaking their language, understanding cultural nuance. In international business development, for example, we had a professor who wrote a book called Business Cultures Across the World. And it really just talked about these cultural nuances. So it's not only during the MBA cohort and in the class, but we also learned about it in the form of material, right? So I think it was very valuable. And in the end, because it was COVID and we were a small group, it's almost like we were family during those 11 months, right? So that was a wonderful experience, actually.
No, that whole learning from each other is so important, and it's an add-on. I think that the MBAs that do their program in Europe, they don't push it enough on their resumes and their CVs saying, look, I know how to work with diverse people. I had 42 nationalities in my cohort. My goodness, I've seen pretty much everything you can imagine. I understand it, and I probably learned a couple of languages along the way. So shout out to anybody who's done their MBA in Europe. Add that to your resume, please. So what are one or two highlights of your MBA, things that just make you smile, that you walk away with today going, my goodness, I made the right choice?
Well, I think one of them is definitely, as I mentioned, right, the book, right, Business Cultures Across the World. And the reason I say that is it's so detailed. It literally says if you're going into a meeting in Japan, you have to be on time. Whereas if it's another Asian country, for example, they expect you to be an hour late. It's just cultural nuance, right? So it's very detailed. And I think there were a lot of things that I didn't think I would be interested in or that were valuable that I picked up in the MBA. So they do say that it's a life-changing experience, right? And what was really special was using it to take some time, reflect on my previous work experience, my career, right? And then decide where I want to go in the future. So what kind of leader do I want to be? What kind of teams do I want to work with? What kind of company culture do I want to get into? And what I was also able to do is at the end of the day, we learned a lot of frameworks, right, as part of every MBA program. But the important thing is we also learned how to apply them in practical cases. So we had a lot of designed, I would say, simulations that we went through in the MBA, where we took something and we kind of customized it. And what I also did in the last 3 years in my career is I was able to take some of those frameworks. And especially today, when you're building AI products, right? It's something that the world has never done. And there's no playbook, there's no formula. And so I customized those frameworks, created my own, and put them into the company culture, saying that this is what fits. So
you kind of segued into the third part of our interview, is that where are you today and how did Grenoble help you get there?
Well, that was a big part, right?
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so as for where I am today, I work as a product and AI lead in a startup in Berlin. I've been here for 3 years. It was a direct result of the MBA, right? It opened up the door to a lot of possibilities in Europe. And I also still remember very vividly applying and searching for roles. And it wasn't just limited to Grenoble and France, right? It was anywhere in Europe that it was available. And we really, I think Grenoble gave us the opportunity to really pick and choose which of the 29 countries do you want to live in terms of roles, future career prospects, also culture and what works for you. So I think it was a direct, it's directly proportional, right, to how I got here. So,
did you ever think you were going to end up in Germany?
Weirdly, no. But I have to admit, there's a lot of connections I can make back to the past, right?
Yeah.
So, and also that matter for France. I also never thought I would end up there, but I'm really glad I did. So.
It sounds like a good fit. I mean, every time you speak with someone who has graduated from these MBA programs in Europe, it's all about fit. And Grenoble sounds like it was a perfect fit for everything tech, everything you wanted to do. You'll have to continue to go back because it's just getting bigger and better every year, the programs down there. If you were to give a piece of advice to someone looking for an MBA program today, given your experience in Grenoble, what would your advice be?
Well, I think I would say take the leap of faith, right? Because it's really wonderful. And I've gotten a lot of things from there that I never imagined I would. For example, I also went back last year to teach at the college.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and that was really rewarding, also to have the opportunity. I never thought I would be a teacher, right? And I got to teach technology management and AI to BBA students, which was really wonderful. So I think, yeah, it's just that, right? So take a leap of faith, and you will be very pleasantly surprised if you really embrace both the French culture, and also the college, right? So. Yeah.
No, everybody thinks that France is Paris, but absolutely not. I mean, France, there's these hidden gems. Well, not for long. Grenoble is going to blow up, just in terms of people are going to realize the amazing opportunities down there.
Yeah.
So take your time, and then, so how did it work in terms of we're going to get a lot of questions in terms of visa for Europe. If you could tell us a little bit about how that worked.
Yeah, so I think, is it for the student visa or
No, for you working in Germany afterwards. A lot of people come and do an MBA in
Yeah,
Europe because they're looking to stay in Europe.
yes.
And sometimes they hit those barriers when it comes to visa. So if you could talk to us a little bit about your experience.
Sure. So I think, I mean, the first thing is the job, right? So as soon as you have an employment contract, the visa is pretty simple. Most of the time, the company sponsor the visa, whether it's also France or Germany or anywhere else. So internships, it's a little harder for them to sponsor. So for internships, you should ideally try to stay in France.
Mhm.
But otherwise, if it's a full-time job, and once you have an offer letter, the visa kind of falls into place on its own, more or less.
People are afraid because they're using US references, but
Yeah.
we're kind of a little bit different over here. I have a question. Can you speak to the average age of the cohort and if anyone came with family or children?
Oh, yes, absolutely, right. So we had, I think the youngest person in our group was 26 or 25. I'm so sorry to the person if I'm not exactly right.
Oh, someone's not going to be jealous that you count them younger. Trust me.
I'm more worried about the part that's coming, right?
Ah, ah, ah.
And I think the oldest was maybe in their early 40s, right, or late 30s. And we had, I think, out of a batch of 20 people, we had at least 4 or 5 people with children.
Wow.
So, and three of them had three kids each, and they were, I think, personally, as I said, here's again part of diversity, right? I think they were my personal superheroes in the MBA because they were able to do the full-time program that we were doing, manage a move to France with their families and 3 kids and the entire, and they taught us a very valuable lesson of how to really balance everything. So
I couldn't agree more. Every time I've been running MBA programs, the people that are most well adjusted and efficient in doing things are the people with children.
yes. And I think they bring a certain level of maturity
Yeah.
to the group, right? That doesn't always just come from work experience, but they really bring that maturity, and they also teach you to really step back, look at what's important, and take that. And maybe it doesn't seem as critical in the MBA, but I think once you start working, that is one of the most critical things you have to do in your job, right?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree. So we're out of questions. Do you have any final words for those thinking of doing an MBA and then thinking of doing an MBA in France besides? Oh, hold on a second. Okay. What is the balance like both day to, oh, this is a really good question. What is the balance like both day to day over the full-time program? Are there breaks where you can travel? Let me start out with this. First of all, I always get this question from the full-time MBAs, and they're always asking about traveling. And I said, well, you actually need to go to class. I mean, it's an academic program at the base of it. So that said, I will hush and stop being negative. And why don't you talk to us about timetabling, travel, all that kind of fun stuff?
Well, I will say it is an intense program, right? Because as you said, it is an academic program. It's a full-time program. But that being said, I think the best thing about France is work life or personal and professional life balance, right? So of course there are breaks. You have also between the semesters, right? When you have certain subjects, core subjects ending, and before the next set starts, you do usually have a break. But I would still say that you should ideally use that time to spend it in Grenoble, right? There's mountains,
There we go.
there's
There we
skiing.
go. Go
So
skiing. They don't need to go far to have a perfect adventure. And then they'll be
yeah.
on time for class.
And to be honest, I was trekking every Sunday. I would go up to the fort, right? Even with class.
Wow.
So I was constantly trekking, and that's a new passion that I discovered in life in Grenoble. It was trekking, not skiing, but it was actually trekking. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
Not something I would enjoy, but that's fantastic. But then it's useful in Germany as well.
Yes, but not in Berlin as much. And I have to say, I miss the mountains. So I do go back to Grenoble every chance I get, at least once a year. It feels like home, but otherwise, also every chance I get.
Well, I'm sure at school they're happy to have you back as well.
Yes, but also for the mountains, right?
Well, you're not far. Well, thank you so much. I know you're a busy woman. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your story with everybody that's thinking of going to France and sharing a little piece of heaven, which is Grenoble, nestled in the mountains with tons of tech and ready for new ideas. Thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.